So I've been, as I was mentioning to a few people earlier, I've been a product manager pretty much my whole career. I actually started being a PM out of school, and when I started out, I didn't even know how to write an email, and so my boss had to teach me how to do that. As I've kind of gone through my journey around PMing, I've really felt like there's been a lot of change just around our product as a point of view, and there's such a huge community that we have going on around here. We've got so many amazing products that get out there, and what can I do in terms of just giving back to the community? So this talk today was actually inspired by a question that was posed on one of my social media groups. There was someone that was trying to recruit, and they basically said, and I'm just reading this out, right? They're like, hey, any tips from this group on recruiting very senior PMs, so staff or principal level? I have a very senior IC role open, it's highly strategic, tons of impact, a broad area of ownership, but I'm struggling with the recruiting pipeline. Not surprisingly, most folks at that level are looking to manage, which is possible here, but probably a year out. Have any of you hit similar roadblocks? And that kind of got me thinking, right? What's going on? Here's someone, they're at a great company, they've posted this amazing role, but they're actually not getting candidates, right? Why is that? How is it that we're looking at our career paths, and what are the kinds of choices do we make, right? And so it started getting me thinking about an area that I care a lot about, which is just career planning, career pathing. It's something that I've toyed or thought about both formally and informally for a while. And when I think about it as PMs, right, we've got to work with a lot of people. We've got to keep increasing and building upon our repertoire. And a career plan, helps us, do our own check-in, right? Much like, project plan, which most of us obsess over, or a meal plan, which, we're constantly on or off, or, vacation plans, which are more fun than meal plans. A career plan is something similar, right? You put a plan together, you figure out, well, these are things I've done, these are things I'd love to do. What does it mean for me to get there? What I'm going to do here is walk you through very quickly my own career story, the kinds of decisions I made, how I grew, and then leave you with a couple of just suggestions, tips that you can take forward. I'm sharing with you towards the end also a cheat sheet around what my current plan looks like, and just look forward to a really fun and engaging conversation, right? So, how did I start out? I actually started out working on the networking stack in Windows. This was about 15 years back, and I was literally working on the bottom of the stack. This was the piece that was taking all of this amazing code that would show up in our browsers or our apps or whatever, and then push it out to the hardware and out into the ether, right? So it's basically building interfaces for drivers that other organizations like Intel or Broadcom or whatever else could build against. When I started out, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I felt like, okay, if I'm on the bottom of the stack, I can, my career plan is to work on every layer of the stack. And if anyone's here done anything around computer science or networking, you might have heard that, well, after the bottom of the stack, you've got the IP layer, you've got TCP/IP, TCP, and then finally you're in the web world, which is just amazing, right? So that was my plan. Couple things happened. One, I was new, so I didn't work on too many features. I actually fixed a lot of bugs, but I learned a lot actually from my bugs. One of the first bugs that I fixed actually resulted in NASA being able to send their space shuttle back into orbit. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, right? This was on day 28 on my job, and I was going around just thanking everyone that I could work on it. It also taught me that even though I'm doing little things, we're in this world where technology can just have a huge impact, right? That kind of stuck with me. Another bug that I fixed, I would say about a year down the road, actually was something to do with mobile phones. These were the ancient pre-iPhone smartphones, right? And there was this issue where you took a smartphone and you connected it to your laptop over USB. Every time you disconnected, either the laptop crashed or the smartphone crashed. Right? So something was going on, and since I was in that driver layer, I had to fix this bug. And I got to play with all of the latest and greatest smartphones circa 2004. But it was again, really eye-opening, right? I was like, wow, there's this whole new world of mobile phones coming up, and they're doing amazing things. I can now browse the web on them. I can check my email. Goes way beyond the candy bar Nokia that I had in my hand back then. And so I spent a couple years. It was time for me to look a change, and Microsoft was staffing up more rapidly against their Windows Phone team, and that's kind of where I moved. And it was again really different from where I was, right? I was in a world in the regular Windows operating system world, which was in some ways very geeky, very stable. People had been doing the same thing for a while, and now suddenly I was in a kind of a well-funded startup, but no one really knew what they were doing, and there were no industry paradigms, right? And it took a lot of me coming out of my typical and well-established tech shell, right, comfort zone, and start saying, okay, you're now in a world where you don't know what devices are going to be used, you don't know what those chipsets are going to be, you don't know what graphic drivers are going to be. And I was actually working on maps and location services, and no one really knew how to reduce a map service onto a phone. The iPhone was, I think it released about 6 months after I got into my role, so at least there was one example to look at. But the thing I really learned over here was to deal with ambiguity. Nobody had the answers anywhere, and a lot of just leadership, right? Because as we work with engineers, as we work with designers, there's nothing better than getting feedback and kind of affirmation that what we're building actually works. In this case, well, you didn't have the device, and finally when a device came together, your app wouldn't load on it, either because it didn't have enough memory on device, or your graphics driver was crashing, or something or the other. It was just one disaster after another, right? And as PMs, one of the things we have to keep doing is enlisting people to our cause, right? Keep motivating them that no, stay the course. Let's just make this work. And it taught me a lot around what it truly meant to own your product. Quick story over here. The first time the app actually worked on a device was Christmas Eve around 11:30 in the night. My developer had to catch a flight at 6 a.m. in the morning, gives me a call saying, okay, great, I've got it working. We plugged it onto a car charger, drove for about 3 miles. It worked. I can tell you a whole other story about battery life and what that means with naps and how they're terrible for batteries. But it also taught me another thing, right? Naps is something that people use on an everyday basis. And after spending a few years again, building maps and learning a lot, when I was looking for change, I was really looking to see what else can we do with mobile, right? Where is it that new ground is being broken? Because that was something which I realized I loved mobile. I wanted to do more, but I also wanted to now go on and do something different. And this is where I was speaking with some friends, and one of them had just joined PayPal, and he was like, "Yeah, you should actually come here and check it out." And so when I moved to PayPal, PayPal was just about getting into mobile. There were point of sale devices on mobile that were being construed, I brought in my understanding of mobile and my complete lack of understanding of payments. And what I also found was, on the job, this was again a V1 product. Not many people knew how to build this, and I said, okay, I've at least done one V1, which means there are going to be lots of disasters. Let's get people ready for that. And the other thing that I realized I could learn over here was how to actually work on customer acquisition and growth. Because one of the things is Windows Phone didn't really take off. I mean, how many people here had actually ever seen one? Okay, how many people? That's a good number. That's more than what I expected. How many people ever bought one? Awesome. Thank you. And that was one of the things that just stuck with me, which is, as a great product manager, we don't just build great products, we actually have to convince people to use them to maybe part with either their money or their data or something, and just keep coming back, right? And what does it really mean? And so the majority of my role was, around working with our data and analytics team, some of our growth teams, our business teams, around understanding the users, understanding our market, segmentation, and just what does it truly mean to acquire customers, to do growth hacking, to run campaigns, and such. I did that for a couple of years, and then I came back to this point where I said, wow, I'd really love to learn more about payments. There is commerce all around the world, it's becoming smaller. And yes, right in the beginning of my career, I maybe wanted to go all the way up the stack. And maybe that wasn't as much fun, but I think this time it might be. And so, I made a transition within PayPal. We were starting up a new product line, and I got the chance to figure out what we should do over there. It was really aimed at building payments platforms for shopping carts or e-commerce providers or marketplaces or crowdfunding platforms and such. And there was a huge part around just thinking about the product over here, but the other part was, again, it's a new product line, and I had to go and fight for resources. I had to enlist people not just on my team, but across the organization. I was starting this out solo, which means I had to convince my leadership that they should actually fund an organization. Then I had to recruit a team, and I had to also recruit, or rather convince customers that they should come onto the platform. And so it was really taking that product management journey to the next level, as well as building an organization around it. And along the way, there was definitely a much larger team that I grew on from where I started as just a single person. I spent a ton of time just recruiting. I spent a ton of time just trying to figure out how we're going to keep funding ourselves. As part of this journey, I was visiting Europe to meet with our sales teams there, which we kind of do about every quarter. And this is still a complex product. It's new, and when you think about complex enterprise products, which are being sold to other enterprises who are complex themselves, you kind of realize that there's this understanding gap. Right? As a product manager, you may understand where you are, but your customer, their mental model is completely different. It's very different from customer-facing consumer products where that gap is much smaller. Enterprise products, there's a huge gap. And so between myself, the product manager, my sales team, marketing teams, and then the customer, that gap just continued to widen. And I was in this real crunch around, okay, what do I do? I can keep building product, but if our teams don't quite know how to sell it, then we're in a bit of a quandary, right? And and someone kind of gave this idea around, well, why don't you go work with all of these external facing teams, spend a lot more time with them. And I said, well, okay, I'm going to try and do that. But then I wasn't in a position where I could both do that and stay on with my regular job building products. And so after months of toying with what to do, I said, okay, I'm going to actually step aside, not be a product manager, having a big product team and building product. I'm just going to go solo, wear this role, be in this role which no one could really define, and just work with sales, marketing, and customers. And so for a year, I was in the product org. I didn't actually build any product. I had nothing to do with roadmaps. I just spent my time with people in sales, people in marketing, in front of customers, with sales engineers, just talking about this is the customer problem, this is what we've got to be solving for them. And it was uncomfortable because you can't build your entire career to this point where you've got a team and you feel very good about yourself, but then you realize it's a little hollow. And then you start working with sales and marketing, and then you realize, wow, that's a completely different planet. I could have been on Mars for all that it was, right? The way they're organized is different, their incentive models are different, the way they're compensated is very different. It's like I could tell them, this is a great product, your customer will love it, but if they're actually going to get their bonuses for doing something different, it's not going to happen. So then you've got to figure out, why aren't they selling your product even though they actually think it's the right thing? It's because their incentive models need to be fixed. So then you figure out, okay, who's laying out these incentive models? There's someone else over here. Then you need to go and influence them. And so, I came, if I reflect back, right, I basically spent a year in the school of influencing. Right? SPMs were essentially, influence without authority. This was influence without authority at scale. And so I did that for about a year, and at the end of it, we had a ton of changes with, lots of changes in our sales organizations, lots of things around how comps were laid out changed. And then, so at the end of it, what am I doing right now? I'm actually back to being in product. I've got a much smaller team, but we're looking at a completely new area, which actually came from a lot of my learnings in the last year. Right? My biggest learning in the last year was customers think about products, especially enterprise products, in one way. Right? Product managers build them. And then how do you get these customers to adopt enterprise products is just a really, really hard problem. And some people have been more successful than others, but it's still a huge struggle. It's usually armies of people in sales teams who will go and meet with enterprise customers and show them, here you go, here's my demo, here's how it will work in your system, and really try very hard. And what we're really trying to do is, okay, how can we take all of that and simplify it and reduce it to some kind of a mental model myth. Right? So that's what I'm doing right now. And if someone asks me, okay, what are you doing next? Yeah.
Okay. How much is the actual typical sales cycle for the product you're trying to sell?
It depends upon the size of the enterprise.
The one which you were talking about.
Yeah, I would say we had both very large enterprises as well as smaller enterprises. The really large enterprises, you could think about the sales cycle somewhere between 9 to 18 months. Then they integrate, and then it might take them another 18 to 24 months to fully ramp and adopt.
Yeah, that's a long window, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so from a prototype to demo to actual implementation, it almost took 3 years.
It could take 3 years for an external organization to fully adopt and scale. Yeah. And mind you, they're changing things like their payment infrastructure, which is like plumbing, and people don't like to rip and replace that easily. So usually what they may have is they may have an existing infrastructure which they will hold on to, and then they will gradually ramp. So in the case of consumer products, you can push it out and we can control the ramp. With these kind of enterprise products, in many ways it's also controlled by the enterprise that is integrating with you.
One more question.
Sure.
So how does your performance metric
Mm-hmm.
look like then during those phases?
Yeah, it comes back to number of integrations, how well they've ramped. So it comes back to both of them. And so the number of integrations really comes back to how well, one, you've penetrated, and two, comprehension, as well as feasibility or suitability of the solution, right? And so if there is a gap in terms of comprehension, then that's going to directly impact the adoption.
Thank you.
How would you go about finding an internship as a product strategy influencer? Basically what you did for like a year.
Well, I did that for a year after being around there or being in product for several years. But if I was to look for an intern to join, it would probably be in an incubation arm of a product team, or it could be in the launch arm of a product team, because those tend to be taking new ideas and new concepts and taking them to market. In many ways, there are similarities between this role and product marketing, as well as go-to-market and launch functions. So you might see those in titles as well. But those roles spend a lot of their effort also in operations.
Interesting.
Product evangelism, which I think someone over here does, right, also has similarities, at least I think.
Yeah, I'm returning back to work and somebody, I went to product school. I took a long break to take care of my children. So I had 6 years in engineering background, again, developing, but in between, meanwhile, I did a lot of pro bono opportunities, organizing many events and things like that. So I guess all that made a difference. And again, I reached out to a person for a return to work program, and he was showing his product and things like that, and he was looking for a product person, and so he offered me an opportunity.
But there are no, actually, companies don't put out product evangelists, right?
Depends, some
You
of
need
them
to
do.
reach out to people, and really you need to take the lead, I guess, wherever we go.
Some of them do.
So basically the strategy would be to find product manager working in like a launch or incubation arm, and then basically contacting them and asking them for an internship probably.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a quick question on your transition from engineering function to product manager. So how smooth was it, or do you attend any formal classes, or it was on the job you picked up at the startup you were with in the city? So just curious on that. I don't know if I touched on that before. Yeah.
So actually, on that note, I've been a product manager my entire career. So I was a PM out of school, and so I really didn't have that kind of a transition. I will say that being a PM out of school, not having an MBA, and not really having much work experience prior to that, was challenging in itself. There were times when I was literally like taught how I should frame my communications, write emails, things like that.
So do you look for an MBA graduate person when you hire?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
I mean, I've hired MBAs, I've hired people straight out of college. And I just had two college hires join in the last week. One of them is an engineer with actually, they did this interesting program out of Carnegie Mellon, where Carnegie Mellon is now offering an MS in product management. So that's what this person did. But then, another person who joined just has an undergrad, did actually a couple of internships in software development, and is now with us at IKEA. Yeah. So, really quick, right? If I think about, how you may want to build your plan, or what are the pillars to my plan. The first piece, and what I think is the easiest of them, is really to think about, okay, what are the product fundamentals? And I've listed a few of them here, and you could make your own list. In my case, growth and acquisition was something I cared for, and I worked on it when I was doing payback here. Inadvertently, when I was working in the last year, wearing my multiple hats, I actually got to understand a lot about what real strategy might mean. And that was something that was a total surprise. The next piece is something that's more core to, I would say, product than other areas. Right? And anyone who's really trying to influence would really think about, what does it mean? How do you get better and better at this, right? Look at career journeys that people have had, role models around you. What are the kinds of things that you get inspired by, right? And then when you translate that back, right, into the day-to-day life of a PM, a lot of it is influencing. Whether it's influencing your designer that actually needs to be a particular way, or influencing your engineer that now they really need to ship something out, and it's okay not to have those extra 3 features. A lot of it is around influencing. Stakeholder management. Very soon, after being a product manager with just one Scrum team, very soon we would realize that no, you're actually dependent on other teams to bring your product together. And usually they may have other agendas, and you may need them to do something for you. So how do you manage that? How do you, bring them along, enlist them, right? And then, when I think about recruiting and hiring and organizational development, these two kind of go together, right? And, it's something that doesn't happen just when you become a manager. It's something that happens constantly. Right? Let's say you met an engineer today and you found them working on this other team, and you got talking and you're like, wow, that person's actually going to be a great fit on my Scrum team. How do I bring them along? Right? Or you're working with someone else and you feel like, this person's actually going to be a better fit in my case, right? More of a consumer facing organization. They get excited by running a lot of A/B tests, and it's a good thing to learn how to do that. Then how do you help out with your own network? Because as a PM, you're probably going to have a larger network and more influence and reach than a lot of your counterparts. And as you think about organizations, you're constantly seeing, where do you see more alignment? Where do you see more efficiencies coming along? How can you really see great fits, right? And these are things that also help yourself, right? You see, I might be a great fit here. What would it mean for me to be a great fit somewhere else? All of this kind of gets to my third point, which is really getting to know yourself. And we never know ourselves enough. We can keep asking a lot of people, which helps paint a really good picture. A lot about how we show up is how others see us. It's perception is reality, right? And so engage a lot in 360 feedback loops, or just check-ins with stakeholders. Just ask people, how did that go? How did I show up okay? Can I do something? Can I help you some more? And be surprised how much if you just ask people, they're sometimes willing to share, right? And if you showed up well with someone, they'd be willing to come back and actually repay you in kind. And if you sometimes just piss someone off, which often happens, they'd be pretty open to say, that wasn't okay. But just getting that feedback loop really helps. Doing a lot of introspection helps, just looking back. Okay, what did I do? What could have gone better? Right? Where does my compass lie? Right? Which way is it pointing? And you could maybe do this once or twice a year to really get true benefit. And then if you kind of again come back to the questions, from there it's around, what do you need to do now? Right? If I've pissed someone off, then I need to fix that now. I really need to address that immediately. Right? If there's a way in which I'm showing up that's just not appropriate, just not confident enough, that's something that I get feedback a lot, where it's like, wow, you're trying to sell your product, but you don't sound like you're really sold yourself. As a PM, I'm constantly seeing bugs in my code, so it's hard sometimes. But that was feedback, for instance, that I got, and I had to fix it. I got feedback at the end of one meeting. The next meeting, I had to fix it. But then the next is, what are the kinds of things that I should be working on in the next year? Right? Which is, I'm in my role. I need to be doing things. How do I pivot? How do I do something that's more of what I'm doing? And then the third is, where would I like to be in the next 3 years? And that's a stretch. Even 18 months out is hard, right? Because there's so much changing around us. But it's good to make yourself feel really uncomfortable and try and imagine what 3 years out may look like. So that's kind of the things I have. I could share really quickly what my cheat sheet looks like right now. On the product fundamental side, I feel like I have done a few things. I've never actually worked on data or AI or ML. Never actually worked on cloud platforms. And that's something I'm curious about. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. On the leadership and growth aspect of things, it's definitely an area that I feel very strongly towards right now. I feel like I have a lot to continue to get better at. And things that I'm just curious about, right? What would it mean if I had to lead a really large team? It's not just product managers, it's designers, or God forbid, engineers. I mean, they're much smarter than I am. I don't know what to do with code. What would it mean if I had to lead them? Like, it's scary. And then on my personal side, the thing that I just need to get really, really better at is inspiring change. I mean, that's kind of taking influencing to the next level. Right? It's really persuading people that where we are is good, but we have to change. We've all got to do something different. We've maybe got to adopt something new. And how do I, go through that process at scale is something that I feel is, I've gotten feedback that I need to get better at it. So with that, it concludes basically the advice, the tips that I had in my pocket. I'd ask each of you, right? How are you going to look at your plan? How are you going to think about jumping off cliffs, taking risks, maybe trying something new, right? Are there opportunities that you've seen that you thought, well, that's probably not me. It looks exciting, and now you may reach forward and just try it. So that's really what I'd love to have happen at the end of this.